No one could have expected the room to fall silent like that. Not over a contract. Not over a number. And definitely not over 109.3 billion yen. But when Shohei Ohtani walked in, even the air seemed to stop moving, as if baseball itself knew something historic was about to happen. It wasn't supposed to be this dramatic. It was just supposed to be a press conference. Cameras, microphones, a few generic smiles. But the moment Ohtani opened his mouth, every executive, every journalist, and every fan watching from home felt the ground shift beneath them. Because somehow, impossibly, the most expensive contract in sports history was about to sound cheap. People expected him to boast. Or at least celebrate. But instead, Ohtani spoke with a calmness that almost felt eerie, like he had already calculated the next 10 years of baseball before anyone else could see it. The Dodgers front office was ready, prepared with charts, analytics, revenue projections, the usual corporate explanations that justify breathtaking numbers. But what came next wasn't something even they could have prepared for. Ohtani said just one line. And it changed everything. At first, no one even processed it. It was too simple, too honest, too Ohtani. And yet, in that moment, every executive just stared at him, speechless, blinking, stunned, because the meaning of that single sentence hit harder than any 500-foot home run he'd ever launched. People had been asking, why would the Dodgers pay 1093 yuan? Why give a player more than any athlete had ever been given in American sports? Why risk the future on one man? But the question evaporated the second those words left his mouth. Every camera in the room zoomed in, every journalist leaned forward, every heart in the room slowed its rhythm, waiting for the next breath. Because Ohtani wasn't talking about money. He wasn't talking about fame. He wasn't talking about himself. He was talking about responsibility, pressure, legacy, and a promise. The Dodgers had known he was special. Everyone did, but they didn't know this. They didn't know that the man who had just signed the most staggering contract in MLB history felt the weight of every dollar, not as luxury, but as duty. And suddenly, out of nowhere, the narrative flipped. 1093 yuan wasn't a fortune. It wasn't excess. It wasn't even a risk. It was a bargain. A bargain for the man who had changed baseball from a game into a phenomenon. A bargain for the player who could fill stadiums across 2 continents. A bargain for the athlete whose every swing could erupt into global headlines. And somehow, impossibly, Ohtani made it sound like he owed baseball more than baseball owed him. The Dodgers media team, usually polished and composed, didn't even hide their reactions. You could see it in their eyes, mixed with disbelief. As if they were witnessing something beyond a contract, something closer to destiny. Even the executive who negotiated the deal looked emotional, like he suddenly realized he hadn't just signed a superstar, he'd signed a movement. Because Ohtani wasn't promising home runs. He wasn't promising MVP seasons. He wasn't promising miracles. He was promising effort. Relentless, uncompromising, unforgiving effort. The kind of effort that turns franchises into dynasties. The kind that turns players into legends. And the kind that turns price tags into footnotes. Outside the building, fans were already chanting his name, unaware that inside, the man they adored had just redefined what greatness looks like. He didn't need the lights. He didn't need the applause. He didn't need the justification. He simply needed the opportunity. And the Dodgers, they gave him the biggest one in the world. But maybe the real shock wasn't the contract. Maybe it wasn't even his quiet humility. Maybe the real shock was how everyone in the room realized, at the exact same time, that this wasn't the peak of Ohtani. It was the beginning of a chapter so enormous, so unpredictable, so potentially era-defining, that one executive whispered off mic. We might be witnessing the greatest athlete who has ever lived. And for a moment, no one could argue. Not after everything Ohtani had endured. Not after the surgeries. Not after the comeback. Not after proving again and again that the impossible was simply his warm-up routine. Because this was the man who broke barriers without speaking. Who united 2 baseball worlds with a single swing. Who carried the hopes of nations every time he stepped onto the field. And now, he was ready to carry a franchise. The press conference ended the same way it began, quietly. Ohtani stood, bowed slightly, and walked off stage as if he hadn't just rewritten what value means in professional sports. The executives watched him go, still replaying that one sentence over and over in their heads, realizing they would tell the story of this moment for the rest of their careers. Outside, reporters scrambled to decode it. Fans argued about it. Analysts dissected it. Critics tried to twist it. But people who truly understood baseball, People who understood Otani. They knew. 1093 yuan wasn't a mystery at all. It was clarity. It was truth. It was the exact price of believing in a once-in-history athlete who refuses to stop at greatness. And as the doors closed behind him, the Dodgers organization understood something deeper than any contract detail. They hadn't bought a superstar. They had partnered with a legend. A legend who had just promised, quietly, humbly, fearlessly, that the best was yet to come.